Philosophers talk to our times. So what do you think were Marx's greatest ideas? The invention of communism? No chance. He didn't invent that. The idea that a revolution was inevitable? He doesn't quite even say that, although he does think it is true. Oh no. It is his two questions he asks humanity. Two questions that 150 years or more later, we're no closer to understanding, answering, or even comprehending. Marx, at his most cynical, would not be surprised. Let me explain. Marx, right in the 1850s, I think I put it, so not early Marx, mid-Marx, realizes something about machines. You see, a good Hegelian, like Marx had always been, understood machines, understood labour as fundamental to human essence. Humans got to understand what they were through working, through their ability to labour. That was what made Hegel different from other philosophers. In a sense, he was critiquing the bourgeois. He was saying, aristocrats don't really understand the essence, the true power of humanity that lies in its useful employ in the world. His image then was always the artisan, the small-scale worker, the little philosopher, working away. And then Marx, understanding that and seeing it in terms of what it would be like if God didn't exist, came to England and christened, I think I'm happier saying, that thing that later on became called the Industrial Revolution. Marx doesn't use the phrase Industrial Revolution, just so that you're very clear on this, but he is the first person to link the two phrases together. Chapter 15, I think, of Das Kapital, he talks about this revolution in industry that Britain has undergone in the last 50 years. And that phrase gets used by the historian Arnold later, who actually cites Das Kapital, although it's the French edition, and turns it around to the Industrial Revolution. Marx then realizes very early on that machines were going to challenge the nature of humanity. That Hegel's simple vision was going nowhere in the face of the cotton machine and the beginning of the industrialization and the mechanization of the workforce. And this creates two challenges, Marx says. Two challenges that humanity will have to comprehend one way or t'other before the laws of entropy catch up with us, at least. The first is that Hegelian vision, which was very like Adam Smith, actually, of a perfect little craftsman working away in his workshop, understanding the nature of reality through gainful employment. Heidegger uses the same argument, actually, for clockmakers, philosophers and craftsmen, is totally moribund. What price the pin maker, with their skill of sharpening that bit of the pin, when a machine can do it for them? More than that, the very process of mechanization will change the very nature of what it was to work. This is no longer the world of the small craftsman, the little skilled manufacturer who uses his tools to create the world. No. Now humans are just a tool, a cog amongst a great machine. The real problem then with machines is that they de-skill the workforce. All the jobs that once required a large number of highly skilled individuals can now be done by children. Marx, in an agonizing description in Das Kapital, explains how, where before we had lived in the world of the small craftsman, now that very same craftsman was merely a gangmaster who hired out his wives and children to be cogs in the industrial machine, and was himself but a cog. The point, of course, is that once you de-skill the workforce, what then? And when will it stop? Marx is very clear. Each generation of machines, which will cost more and more, will do without humans. For humans are always expensive, and machines are a one-off expense. Made, done. Humans you have to keep alive, you see, and maybe give a little bit of extra money to. And so he suggests, what will happen when we've sacked the last human? When machines have taken over? What then? And it's a question. His answer, or the answer that everybody always shouts, is revolution. And yes, Marx did believe in a revolution. But the question is more important than the answer. Because what then? What did happen? Well, Marx was writing when only 1 or 2 countries were industrialized. He envisaged this all happening rather quickly. He kind of missed globalization, the way that empires would knock themselves out from Europe and would create then new workers, well, both new consumers to sell tat to, but also new workers who could be kept alive for almost nothing. And so capitalism has become a macabre charabang, able to move around the world, because you could always find a near-slave workforce who you could pay less than a machine would cost you in the end. He overplayed the cost of keeping humans alive, and perhaps even underplayed callousness of the system. Oh, it still can't last forever. Marx would be the first to point out, sooner or later, the great law of entropy will catch up with humanity. As you puff chaos and heat into the atmosphere, entropy, that is chaos, gradually multiplies. And once it's begun, it never stops, it never goes away, so that we still live in the effects of the pollution of the 1840s. And it is growing and growing. And sooner or later, of course, you can call it global warming if you must, but I would rather call it climate chaos, will come. A very Marxist idea. That's the first challenge. The second, I think, is even more profound, and the one that Marx is probably proudest for himself for understanding. What, he says, what will machines do to human desire? You see, on the face of it, they turn human desire into be a living God. Think what machines do. They cool down the storm winds. They plunder the secret fires of the earth. They break open atoms. And why? So that they can be plugged into mighty machines. And what are those machines doing? But serving idle women fancy. Human desire, then, becomes like a Greek god, able to punch where it will, to create new worlds. But it is more macabre than that, and far, far darker. For human desire becomes also a cog in the machine. Great machines, once they've started, cannot be turned off. You can never undo them. Desire, then, can never be replete and satisfied without destroying the entire process, without destroying its own power. Desire will have laid upon it, then, the near Kantian duty to ever pull out new desires, new lusts. It cannot be quiet. The human soul, the mind, the thing that Hegel thought was going to be united by work, will be pulled apart, literally, as it becomes increasingly hard to hold your identity within the myriad of desires that are forced to echo in your soul in order to keep the entire industrial process going. And how can humans live with that? How will they live with that? What then? Will they ever be able to reconcile these desires? Or will their very desire become another part of the machine? A desiring machine. If you've come this far, you will have realized that AI, as it is being sold to us by the capitalists of our day, is of course really plugged in to this Marxian dream, this Marxian nightmare. Firstly, AI, of course, de-skills the last set of skilled labourers, I mean the middle classes, us artists and philosophers. We could all be done by machines now, which just tell you lies and you won't be able to tell them apart. But also, AI merges our identity with the machine itself, so that the capitalists who create them dream they can usurp, finally, the last vestige of humanity and turn our desires into a very unit of production. It is an unsettling vision. And so the great "what then" of Marx, for me, still holds. What then? What will we do? Do we just let it happen? Or do we demand an answer that is different from the ones that we are given? This is surely the great question of the revolution of our times.